Yes, guys, how are we doing? I hope you're really good. So welcome to part 2 of the Peak Performance Playbook. This is our prelims or our prelim course or our build up to our main event, which is the 3-day Awaken Your Potential course, which is happening next week. And if you are not registered for that, in the description, the link's there for you to secure one of the 3 places while we're there. Now, firstly, apologise. This was due to obviously happen at 6:30. I tried to put messages out to everyone last night. I have to go to London on business. So I have to get 6 o'clock train, kind of a last minute sort of thing. So I've had to quickly do this here, and hopefully you can watch back and still get monumental amounts of value. Okay, so we spoke today. We're going to be talking about barriers, and the whole week is predicated around understanding focus, understanding barriers, understanding prioritization, all based around understanding how we command our time, energy, and focus. Where's our time, energy, and focus going? Okay. So when we think of barriers, we think of things that keep things out, okay, ideally. And when we have barriers, what we're doing is creating structure, okay? And when we have structure, then we are able to protect that time, that energy, and that focus that we've set ourselves to be able to accomplish and achieve the things that we're looking to achieve, right? And without those barriers, the water floods in, everything externally floods in, keeps everything very chaotic, and we never really make any progression. And the whole point of us awakening our potential is to reach that potential, whether it's personally or professionally. And that's the thing that we're trying to achieve. Okay, we are trying to make sure that we protect the most important parts of our day, most important parts of our time and our energy and our focus. Okay, so we're going to go through a 3-step process here of understanding barriers, how it looks visually, and how we can start to protect those things. Okay, and then that will lead us on to the 3rd session, which is going to be on Friday, which will be at 6:30, in terms of how do we prioritize our time and our energy. Okay, so let's get into it today. So, like I mentioned before, if you want to imagine, and this is how I imagine, I like to visualize things. So the way that I create or think of barriers is if I think of when I was back in Afghanistan, we would have an FOB, which was a forward operating base. And we would have to create barriers to stop suicide bombers coming in, to stop people attacking the base. And we'd have barriers all out to keep the enemy out. We'd have sentry posts to make sure we could defend the forward operating base. So we had all of these barriers to protect us in the middle. So if you look here, the thing that we really need to understand is that this saying of success starts at home. So when success starts at home, when we build up our home life, we really can then go on to thrive in the other areas of our life. Okay, it's the one area that we can sort of absolutely nail, and we're going to come on to that in a minute. Now, this is the picture that I'm trying to paint for you guys to understand what barriers are. Okay, so if we look at all of these guys in the red, these are the enemy, and the enemy comes down to even though you love your job or your business, it's the professional side of your life, it's the pressure, it's the responsibility, it's the trying to achieve everything, it's the impatience, it's the financial pressure, it's the external pressure, it's customer pressure, consumer pressure. All of these things end up affecting your home. They're trying to break in, okay? And what we have to be able to do is put these barriers in place to be able to protect that. Does that make sense so far? So even if you're watching back, in the comments, just let me know as you're going along, yep, this resonates, this makes sense, because this is important to understand. Okay, so we have this here. This is our home life. This is the work. These are the work obligations. Maybe you've got yourself into poor structure, bad habits, but this is what's trying to encroach on that home space. And if our home space is affected, and I've been doing this a long time, the results, guys, end up in separation, because you become so consumed with work that you're not paying attention to the people that matter. You're not being the knight in shining armor to your wife, or supporting your wife or making sure she's got everything she needs, and because it's a partnership, all right? So that's what we're trying to achieve, right? And also, you're not being that superhero to your kid. So they desperately want your time, but we're constantly in this battle here. Okay. And there are times when you're going to have to just immerse yourself into your work, when there is a project to get over the line, when you're doing a launch, okay, or when there's a heavy project that needs doing, but it's not forever. And this is the thing that we have to understand, is that sometimes we do have to go all in on work, okay, but for the large majority of it, we have to be able to sustain a routine that protects the home life, that protects the relationships. But more importantly than all of that, that protects you, your well-being, your mental state, your emotional state, and your physical state. Does that make sense? Because you are the asset of your business, you are the asset of your career, you are the asset of your family, you are the asset of your own life. And if you are not taking care of you, then everything else around you is going to crumble. Okay, that's why we talk about leading you to lead them. Make sense? Okay, so let's go on to number 2 right here. So number 2 is about understanding the success starts at home model. Okay, so the most important 3 frameworks when we think about success starts at home, the 3 most important things that we're protecting in here, okay, are health, relationships, and the barriers protecting those 2. All right, so the first one is health. So your well-being, your mental state, your physical condition is the most important thing on the planet. So while you're still breathing, you are the most important person. Not your wife, not your kid, not your business, not your career. Because unless you are functioning as the asset of your own life, everything else is going to crumble around you. So if you're burnt out, if you're too exhausted to go to work, if you've got no energy, if you've got no drive, you're at risk of strokes, heart attacks, exhaustions, disconnect, no sex life, putting on weight. So when you look in the reflection in the mirror, that is a byproduct of the effort that you put into yourself. Okay, so if you're overweight, it's because you've let it go. Okay, you are the byproduct of the effort that you put into yourself. So if you're overweight, it's because you're not paying attention to yourself. It's because you're not prioritizing yourself. It's because you're prioritizing everything else around you. And we want to make sure that we are looking and feeling great, because if you're not looking and feeling great, then the energy everywhere else is going to be flat. Okay, so first and foremost, the thing that we're trying to protect with those barriers is you, and you becoming the asset. And that's what we do with guys. When we work with guys, we are making them the priority. Okay, second one is your priority relationships. The priority relationships and the connections that we have with those people are so important. I think I spoke about this scenario on Monday, but there's always this scenario that plays on my head. And if you had all of the money in the world, you had a really good career, you had a really thriving business, you made millions or whatever, thousands, but you ended up in a house by yourself where you saw the kids half the week and with no partner. That's a place or a state almost of becoming quite unhappy, because you've got all the money in the bank, because you've thrown everything into work, but you lost all the relationships along the way. And that is the result of many, many men that I've worked with. Okay, they've come to me and they've been in that place. Versus, okay, actually ending up in a bedsit, it all going wrong, or Pete Tong, you end up in a bedsit, but in that bedsit, you've got your family and you're getting by and you're just surviving. Obviously, that's worst case scenario, but we're going to 2 extreme scenarios here. You'd end up still feeling fulfilled because you had those people around you. You'd feel wounded, of course, but it's understanding that the very base layer of happiness and fulfillment is with the people that we spend the time around with, right? It doesn't matter about the houses. It doesn't matter about the cars. What it matters about is those meaningful relationships that actually you're working for. So you're building that career and you're building that business to build a great life for all of those guys. But if it comes at the sacrifice of losing all of that, of losing your own mentality through stress by piling on weight and looking in a mirror and constantly feeling ashamed and unhappy with the way that you look, Is it worth that sacrifice? This is why barriers have to be put into place, okay? And then the third most important is upholding those barriers to protect those top two, okay? Does that make sense? We've got to be able to protect those top two things, okay? Then equally, the top three things that we want to focus on within the professional role, okay, is we want to build on that success, the growth, and the achievement. Now, when things are good at home, in terms of you being the asset, in terms of you having those priorities in the right place, in terms of you feeling energized, well structured, well organized, a well-oiled machine, then we achieve these things naturally. Because success at home leads to success in professional life. It leads to success in personal achievement. It leads success to personal finance. And this becomes the heart of your operation. When I say operation, I mean life. Okay, makes sense? So again, in the comments, let me know if this is making sense. Let me know if this is making sense. Okay, so let's look at how our barriers sometimes get invaded. Now, I'm just going to do this as a standard day. Okay, this is purely for example. So let's have a look at this model here. So in the morning, 6 till 9 is just personal time, getting out, school runs. Hopefully you're doing some morning routines and stuff like that for yourself. And then let's say from 9 till 5, you do work, and then from 5 till 7. So I break down the evening routine into two different personal sections. 5 to 7 is usually with the kids. And then hopefully 7 till roughly most people go to bed about 10 is with the wife. That's the connection with the wife. So this is the time with the wife, okay? But what ends up happening? What ends up happening is that here, okay, here, when work happens here, we end up invading this personal space. Now, you don't have to be working practically for it to be invaded, all right? It can be in here. So when you're not present, when you're in the room, but you're not present, you're still in work mode, okay? That's the important thing to understand. So understanding that when we are in there, when we're not unwinding, when we're not decompressing, when we're not separating, when we're bringing work home, we're invading that personal space. So you can see it here, I'll put it here, okay? So that means we miss dinners. That means that we're exhausted. That means we lack connections, lack communication. We come home, we don't go to the gym, we don't prioritize ourselves, we don't talk to the wife and ask her how she's doing, we don't play with the Peppa Pig toys or the wrestling or the football in the garden in the evening. It just eats into your personal space. And this, over weeks and months and possibly years, is why people separate two passing ships. Okay, this is why they wonder when they walk through the door why the kids are not running up to them going, "Daddy, can't wait for you to be home, can't wait to see you." Because you come back like a zombie, okay, you come back exhausted. And don't get me wrong, there are times, like I mentioned earlier, when we have to go above and beyond. When there's times when we have to put the shift in to get the deal across the line, to get the report in, to finish the audit, or whatever it is that you're doing. But me, this week and next week, I have to work in the evenings, I have to work a little extra because we're launching up to open up the doors to our programs, right? So we've got the peak performance this week, we've got Awaken Your Potential next week, and then we're launching places for our Elite Movement Blueprint. So I have to work here, but that's where communication comes in. We build a communication with the wife, with everyone else around us. Then when we look here, this is how we can avoid that. Okay, and this is a system that and a strategy that we put into place for guys. So we go through the whole process here. We develop a morning routine. So the barrier is about your personal development, your personal drive and growth in this morning routine, okay, here. But in the evening, we have what's called a wrap-up transition period. So if you finish at 5, we would start this at 4. We would go through this little strategy right here. So we would have a brain dump of things that are going through your head in terms of work. What are the things I need to pay attention to? What are the things that need doing? What are the things that are cropped up today? You then do your plan for the next day. What are the top 3 things that you need to focus on? How do I know how to get those things done? What do I need to get those things done? Okay. Then for the last hour, you would engulf yourself in just logistical night work. Okay, if you get into a deep task that's going to take your mental and emotional effort, that's going to continue into your personal space. Okay, so all of the deep work gets done here in the morning before lunch or early afternoon, because that's when you're in your peak of your work flow. Okay, and then we start slowing down towards the afternoon, and that allows you to be able to decompress your mental state and your emotions from work, because that's what we're trying to drop, right? And then we distract ourselves with either going for a walk, going to the gym, going for a run, listening to a podcast. We take our mind off all of that pressure and that built up intensity from what that work gives us. And doing this and giving this daily practice allows us to walk through the door, leaving the armor at the front door. Okay, and this creates barriers between work-life balance. Does that make sense? Now, obviously, we can go into much more detail about that, but I'm just giving you an insight. And the last thing, consequences of not having barriers. Okay, and these are ones that I've just seen come over the year. So becoming unhealthy, putting on weight, not being happy with the way that you look, constantly comfort eating and drinking booze, burnout. So like burn completely and utterly fried in the way that you're thinking, not thinking straight, not making good decisions. You're not effective within your business or your career or at home. Okay. Low energy. Often low energy leads to low energy relationships, zero sex life, zero drive to get fit and healthy, zero drive to want to show up. Okay. Misplaced connections. Okay. The most important thing, connections with people. It's so important. Okay. Ineffective within your job role. You're no good to anyone if you're burnt out. You are no good to anyone if you're making poor decisions. Okay, you almost become that liability. All right, guys. So I've probably gone on longer than I wanted to here, but hopefully you've got some good insights into barriers. And obviously, these are just insights. Okay, these are just thought processes. A lot of the stuff that we do with people when we work with guys is we make this happen practically. We actually implement and lay out all of the structure with all of the training that we do in our blueprint. But the next step for you guys, if you've got this far, is watching on Friday at 6:30 in the morning when we do the priority stages. How do we prioritize our time, energy, focus, so we can understand the strategies involved with prioritization. And then next week, we're running our Awaken Your Potential course. You can register by using the link in the description. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday evening, 8 till 9, okay, on Zoom. And it will be very much like this, but in much more detail with the strategies. All right, guys, listen, I hope this has been of value. I really would love your feedback if you've got this far. And if you're listening on audio, you can give me feedback on my email, which is me@boardmanjames.com. Have a good day.